Okay, it is 6:02. And this is the Madison Policy Committee meeting for Board of Ed. All right, so we have our agenda. You've got your summary from Shipman and Goodwin. And I would just I would prefer to take the first policy on the list and do it last. No one has any objections. All right, so the first policy for review that we will discuss then will be 5060.1.2 non-residents. We should have the current policy, and then you should have policy 5060 residency, which is the new policy to replace it. So this will be a rescind and replace, rescinding 5060.1.2 non-residents being replaced with 5060 residency. Shipman and Goodwin recommended that 5060.1.2 be repealed because it overlapped with policy 3240, non-resident admission and tuition fees, which Madison adopted in 2019 after review and revision by Shipman and Goodwin. The administration wanted to keep a residency policy and asked Shipman to draft one to replace the current policy 5060.1.2. And that is the policy 5060. So I had just a couple of comments regarding this policy. Lines 23 and 24. In addition, prior to attending school, in accordance with state law and board policy, the district will require proof of age and adequate proof of health assessments and immunizations. So I think I must have like misread it or something, but the proof of health assessments and immunizations, that goes back to in accordance with state law and board policy. Okay. So that's just whatever is required.
Yes, the state has a standard form that everyone has to submit.
Okay. And then in lines 39 and 40. For children who live in Madison with their parents and for adult students, the district shall require one of the following forms of documentation to establish residency. And the only issue I have with this is that I feel like it is not as well worded as the rest of it when it comes to saying for children or adult students or parents that reside. It's just that the way it states it, I know I'm not being clear, but the district is requiring one of the following forms of documentation to establish residency. I feel like it should say from the parent or guardian or adult student.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, because it sounds like they want, because it says for children who live in Madison with their parents, they require documentation. And it sounds like it's referring back to the child.
Right.
And so I feel like it should say that documentation comes from the adult student or the parent or guardian of the children. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are you following me?
It says the legal guardian or parent shall provide the district with.
Or adult student.
Yeah, or adult student.
So you
So
got that.
after the comma, after adult students,
Or for the parents of children who live in Madison. Or adult students.
Yeah, I'm not really on my game here.
I would say that
Where's-
and then you say, the district shall require of the parent / guardian or adult student, one of the following forms.
Yes,
Cleaner, yeah.
that's excellent, thank you. That was my issue with that, because later on it states it like again, and it is much more clear like that, so. That was the only one I caught that I thought was like odd. And then the other line that I thought was a little odd was lines 90 to 91. After such hearing is held, the board shall, 1, make a stenographic record or tape recording of the hearing. And it just seems antiquated, like a tape recording. Is that really the wordage they use?
That's the verbiage the attorney used. We didn't change it.
I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
it sounds like, you know, I've got a cassette tape recorder and like, would it just be like a recording of the hearing? Or are they trying to specify that it is not video?
say audio recording.
right, I think audio recording would.
It just, it just caught that and I'm like,
Yeah.
seriously, like,
Real to real.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a stenographic record, so we could have a stenographer, we're not gonna hire a stenographer, of course.
Yeah.
We use a
We use
we use
Zoho.
cell phone, yeah.
Sorry, Zoe. So anyway, so just, audio recording instead of tape, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. Sorry. I was also a little.
So
loopy.
just replace tape with audio.
Yeah,
Okay,
all right, so the changes on this would be the finessing of the wordsmithing from 39 to 41. And then that 91. Did anyone else have any issues with this besides me?
That's a good catch, thank you.
You are welcome. All right, so that is 5060.1.2 non-residents will become 5060 residency. With those changes, are we all agreed on that to send it
Yes.
forward to the board? That'll take 2 weeks.
that's fine. Yep.
Okay. Then next on the agenda would be 3240. Non-resident admission and tuition fees. This is a revision of the current policy. You can see the changes are noted. It is mostly changing his or her to superintendents or changing the lettering numbering. I think the only really substantive changes was that the 12th grade student wishes to complete their 12th grade year in the district, line 86. And then there were line 101. And 101 is any student determined to be homeless. I feel like there should be some commas in there. Like any student determined to be homeless, comma, or an unaccompanied youth in accordance with state and federal law and the board's policy regarding homeless students, comma, shall not be charged tuition. Yes, no? I felt like it was like a run on, like, what are we referring to?
Let's ask the college board.
I'm just saying, I like commas.
Yeah.
I feel like it reads easier. That's just my own personal opinion. So my only comment on this was that, if you recall, we had a parent who was in the Coast Guard who came forward asking whatever. So I guess my question is, with this policy, we didn't really change anything from before, but yet they came to the board and we voted on it. And so according to this policy, it could have just been your decision. Was that just something that you felt you wanted the board to weigh in on, or?
Yeah, see, I think that was a unique case. I think this policy, I think gives me the appropriate amount of leeway and, if something like that ever came up again, I would bring the person forward to the board and explain the situation, because I wouldn't want to be charged with, that, as well as, CIAC, if anything ever came up sports wise, they want like a lockstep policy that you're following. And I would never want it to say, let's say some basketball player somehow is here with somebody and they're trying to claim the superintendent waived the policy for them or something like that. I would never want
Okay, so you just did it.
a strong.
You could have done it, but
Yes,
you
yeah.
chose to bring it to us, and we
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But that was just my
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
was like. If
I
this-
thought that was a nice one too, for the board to see,
It was.
someone who wants to be in our school district that badly, with that, making that effort. And I thought that was a really nice story, and you guys handled that very well.
So this policy 3240, non-resident admission and tuition fees, there are not really that many changes in it, like.
Yep.
So I would recommend that we waive the second read. Do you guys agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to point out too, to make it shorter and more concise and clear, we took out 130 for the 137. Because we have the documentation of that. Anybody that's already in the program knows what they're paying. We have the so that's
Right.
gonna continue forward. We had one scenario where somebody saw the policy and asked, could they be considered under that? So we just didn't want to go through that continually. We thought that was make it clear going forward, and everybody in that program is already grandfathered, so we're
Right,
good place with that. So just want to point that out to the board.
thank you. I figured that, actually. All right, so 3240, then we will rescind and replace and waive the second read. So then,
We've had a lot of other districts ask us about that.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've talked to a
pretty
lot of
popular,
folks
they,
about
you know,
that.
they end up having somebody talk to Zoe, it's usually starts superintendent to superintendent, but then. Somebody talks to Zoe how it operates and it's,
Why?
because they don't have anything like that now and they wanna have that as an employee benefit or
Okay,
a small money generator, that it's not gonna. Buy us a. Football stadium or anything, but, maybe.
a corner of the
Yeah,
baseball field.
right, yes, exactly.
It'll give us third base.
Yeah, one swath of a.
All right, so then the next policy is 5120.4.2.5. And so my first comment on this is, oh my God, can we change the number? Because it's like ridiculous. So I don't know if it has to be in a specific order, I'm assuming not, but like, couldn't we just make it like 5122?
Let me see where we are right there.
And honestly, I would like to go into the 5,000 series and just renumber. Then because it's like ridiculous. But I'll talk to you about that later, so I'll put it on the agenda for another day, but
Computer shut down. Excuse me. Back to life.
cause like we could change it to 5120.6 and leave it in the 5120s, but I'm like. Do we need to do that? Is there a specific reason? Because like, make it 5122, make it just, and we can go in and just get rid of all the decimals, cause we have rescinded so many policies. That there's really no need for them anymore if we just like renumber them, but anyway, that's irrelevant right now. I just wanna see if we can change that number. Besides that, there's hardly any changes. You can see they advise that we change it to the district. And they took out the wording safe because it's now called school climate specialist, and then they updated. So they said, we have made technical edits to this policy to update the contact information for national and statewide community resources available to victims of child sexual abuse and sexual assault and their families. We also updated references to the safe school climate specialist to reflect the revised statutory titles of climate specialist. There are no substantive changes to the policy. So besides the possibly changing the number,
It can be 1520.6.
I'm sorry, say that again?
One
So five,
5120.6.
okay,
And I also just noticed flipping through the shipment would, look at this in lines. 68 to roughly 72, some of those policy number references are incorrect. I'll go through and change them to make sure those are accurate.
oh, okay,
That's what we're looking at, but.
good catch.
So I will fix. I'll double check all of those before you move
Okay.
forward, based on how many reads you want to do.
Right. Right, so then the changes here are hardly anything, we'll change the number to 5120.6. And then everything else is updated. Line 217 to 219, is that a typo from the address? I see 219 is crossed out, but it's on the line above in the web address.
Yeah, probably. Sometimes the red line edits get a little messy. I'll double check.
Okay. Other than that, I didn't really see, how's that? All right, so the recommendation is changes to 5120.6. Procedures for reporting child sexual abuse and sexual assault, with just the minor changes that they Chipman and Goodwin advised. My feeling is that we could waive the second read on this one as well, if you guys think so.
Yes.
Okay. Gayla? Wait, second, okay. All right, so that's the last three policies, so
Yes.
now we're good to go to the one that I have issues with. So in your packet, you should have the current policy 6144.2. Reevaluation of challenged instructional materials and library and media center resources. And then you will have the revised Shipman and Goodwin policy 6144. Library collection, development and maintenance, library displays and programs, and library material review and reconsideration, as well as the 6144 regulations, same name. Yeah, I'll let you start.
Two things. I think Shipman and Goodwin did the usual excellent job, but I think the wording was like trying to put lipstick on a pig with this policy. I do not like it. It's a broad statement. I think that it fails to address both ends of the pipeline. The acquisition and the removal of material, and I think the criteria are for evaluation are vague. And I think that it's kind of like the Roach Motel or Hotel California, you can check it anytime you like, but you can never leave. So it's easier to get books in the system than it is to remove them, maybe that's a good thing, I don't know. But I just think the criteria are very nebulous for evaluating the merit of a book to come in, the appropriate pedagogical purpose, and I may understand the intent. But I also think that it's not inclusive enough in letting not include a board of ed member or another member of the public in. But those are broad statements, but that's kind of the way I feel about it.
So I will say in the policy summary from Shipman and Goodwin, section 321 of Public Act 25-168 requires boards of ed to adopt 3 policies related to school libraries. 1, a library collection development and maintenance policy. 2, a library display and program policy, and 3, a library material review and reconsideration policy governing school library materials, displays, and programming. These policies must be created in consultation with the superintendent of schools, the director of curriculum, and a school librarian, and reviewed and updated as necessary every 5 years. The policies must include a number of provisions outlined in a statute and ensure, among other things, that all library materials are evaluated and made accessible in accordance with state non-discrimination laws. We have drafted one comprehensive model policy that encompasses the new statutory requirements in all 3 areas. So that's what they had to say about this. So I will comment on what Galen said, and I had issues with this. This is the second time it's come to the policy committee. We looked at it once before, and we went back and we were having Shipman and Goodwin take a look at the definition of individual with a vested interest. I did go to the actual public act, and that is directly from the public act, that definition. But I will say that I still feel it is not inclusive enough because it does not even include board of ed members if you don't have a student in the school system. It is my feeling that vested interest is literally anyone who votes in the town of Madison. Because I think it is a vital interest of what our children, our students, regardless if they are your child, maybe they're your grandchild, maybe they're, your nephew, whatever. Or you have children that went through the system already, or you have children yet to go through the system. I think all these people have a vested interest in what the students in the Madison Public School District has access to in the libraries. And so I don't feel that this is inclusive enough by saying that only individuals with a vested interest, meaning school staff member employed by the board, a parent or guardian of a student currently enrolled in a school operated by the board at the time a request for reconsideration is filed, and any student currently enrolled in a school operated by the board at the time a request for reconsideration is filed. I did look at the Connecticut Librarians Association, and on their ctlibrarians.org website, they actually say SB 1271, which is the what they're referring to, requires public and school libraries to adopt clear written policies outlining how materials are selected and how challenges to those materials are handled. The process must be locally governed, open to residents, parents, students, and school staff, and follow a fair, transparent process. Earlier provisions that raise concerns, such as language about defamation lawsuits, were removed during public negotiations. So even the Connecticut librarians are saying that it's not just parents, school staff, and students, they also include residents. And so I think that in our policy, we should also include the residents of Madison. Because if one of us has a problem with a book that is in the library or a display or whatever, according to this new policy, the way it is written by Shipman and Goodwin, unless we have a student in the system, which none of us here currently do, we would not even be able to raise a concern.
The other question I have, aside from inclusiveness representation, is what are valid criteria for removing a book? Mediocrity? I mean, right? what's the? You know, seriously, why, if you, I mean, if it can't be because it gives grounds of offense to somebody. Which is never, not always a good reason, I'll grant you that.
Mm.
What would be the reason to want to remove a book or a material or presentation or whatever?
What you're suggesting is that there should be a set of criteria on which the basis for removal must be tied to the policy or the statute. And if you want to start doing that, then you're excluding people who may have religious objections, may have objections
I mean-
based on.
Is it that we just talk it over as best professional judgment? Is that it, really?
Yeah, well, but here's the thing, what you're not reading into this perhaps
Yeah.
is the concept that one of the reasons they include the library and media specialist is because the library and media specialist is tied into the I think it's National Librarians Association. They have a whole host of criteria for establishing, and the State Department of Ed also has criteria for establishing what's age appropriate material. So, there's not gonna be something in, the Neck River Elementary School library that's, fit for seventh graders and up. You know what I mean? So there's, the library and media specialist has to curate the collection along with the superintendent and the curriculum specialist. So, this stuff is all carefully vetted before it's even placed in our library. So in my estimation, it should be difficult to remove it. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with extending this to board members. So that board members can challenge a book. But to allow the community is to invite what was happening next door a couple of years ago, where it just became fodder for extremism.
I guess that's my point, is it's like, I think we should be, our resources are finite, we should be careful about what we. What things we acquire, and I'm a little bit frustrated by the lack of. Accountability or to say that, well, it's up to nationally developed standards is.
Well, what I find interesting about this though is often our policies will reiterate what those either statutes say. Instead of just referring to the statute, we will literally repeat what the public act says or what the statute says or whatever. But in this particular case, there's no reference whatsoever to where these recommendations come from, where like this association of, Connecticut Association of Librarians, if it comes from the State Department of Ed, there's literally no reference to how these are chosen.
You mean the installation of the books, where they
Yes.
come, because that's not the law. The law is how a challenge happens. And it's like Seth said, to avoid anyone in town from bringing challenges, like where else do we open it up? Even to board members receive a curriculum and then they react to it. They don't write the curriculum.
Well,
So
No,
there's
but we
nowhere
have-
else that we open that up. to
I'm not
board members
sure about that because.
Or citizens of the town.
Because doesn't it say like library collection development, and isn't the first part of this about?
Right,
About, it's, we've got to pick things that are age appropriate and have pedagogical value, et cetera, right?
right. So we're replacing a 1994, our oldest policy. I think this is our oldest policy that we're replacing with the current law on how, it's developed. I think if we wanted, because, we're not facing a current challenge.
Yeah.
We could have Gail come in and even our library coordinator to talk about how library, catalogs are developed. It's similar to what was said. We don't just randomly go off of something. We go off of a list that is set for middle schools, 6 to 8 middle schools, and they pull that up and see what is current and most popular with students. So it's coming off of something that's already been curated and for students of that age.
I would
But,
say though that you're wrong, because this specifically says. Section 321 of Public Act 25-168 requires boards of ed to adopt 3 policies related to school libraries. 1, a library collection development and maintenance policy. 2, a library display and program policy, and then 3, a material review and reconsideration policy. So it's not just about reconsidering what's in there, it is about collection development. But
Right, no, I
chicken and
referenced
cooper-
that, I mean, that's what, but I don't think the board doesn't get involved in the development of the collections, you never have.
But I'm
okay.
saying that,
That's beyond, you know, the role of a board member, I would say.
I would agree with that. I think it's very much like getting into curriculum.
but we approved curriculum. We do get into
We're
curriculum,
approving this.
but what you're saying is that we don't have anything to do with curriculum. We have an entire curriculum committee that does get involved with curriculum. They don't write the curriculum, but they approve it. They make changes to it. They make sure it fits what we want before they bring it to the board to be voted on. So I disagree with that. We absolutely do have something to do with curriculum. We don't specifically write it. That's not our job, but we do change it. We do adjust it, we amend it, and we vote for or against it.
Well,
It's a good question, I'm.
in point of fact, in point of fact, we don't actually amend and change it, we discuss it, and sometimes any concerns that are raised by the board are addressed and brought back to the subcommittee
And they change
before
it
it comes
to
up.
what we like,
Yeah,
and then we
but-
approve it. It's the same thing.
Well-
That's like splitting hairs.
But you don't say, no, we don't agree with that algebra formula or chemistry formula. I
That's
wanna
not a
change it to
curriculum.
this.
That's not a curriculum. Bad example.
Oh, it's fine.
Example, because I feel like this is their area of
But
expertise.
I think we're kicking it upstairs to some nebulous national standard that may or may not be.
Right, like at least
Not-
when
I
we do
respectfully
curriculum,
disagree with that.
our teachers and Gail, they're writing our curriculum. This is like this National Association of
Yeah.
Librarians.
I think you're anchoring, let me respond, because you're anchoring that on what I said. That's like the precondition, the basic fundamental precondition is that it's coming from a pre-vetted list that the National Library Association and the Connecticut Association of Librarians have already vetted and curated to what they feel is right for Connecticut. Part of the process here is that, and the reason why a library media specialist is involved is to further narrow it and hone it to our LEA, our local education authority, and to our town and our community. So, you know, I didn't mean to say that they just take whatever the library association does and copy and paste it, and that's
No, but it is the
therefore everything
basis.
is
It is the basis. And there's
Yeah, it's the
no
basis.
direct,
science of reading is the basis for our reading program, right?
And these are books in the library. These aren't books that are part of the third grade curriculum that each student must read or has options within the school library. They have the option to take it out. I think we are very transparent in terms of what's there. I know parents can access that. I don't think in my 5 years we've had a challenge when it is open to everybody. Like, I don't, you know, right now this is open to anybody who has a residence in Madison.
but I would again say that if you are a resident of Madison who votes on the Board of Ed budget and you vote in Madison, you are a stakeholder.
So can they go into Scranton Library and make an objection to a book in there?
Why not?
But do they have to go through a process to do it?
I don't know. I would imagine so.
But what say, what say do they, why would we be, I think that where this came from was, why would we be responding to somebody who says, I have an objection with this book that doesn't have in the state's definition of vested interest?
Yeah, and yes, one can argue tenuously that members of the community are very indirectly impacted by what a child in third grade may be reading in the library on any given Monday. But I do think, as I said before, like where I can meet you part of the way is I do agree that, board members, we should consider allowing board members to count as our local definition what's the word? Individual with vested interest, so that there's some oversight and we can be responsive to the community. Someone can come up to one of us and say, I don't like this book. I'd like you to challenge it, right? And then, you
Right,
know,
but they don't have a direct way to do it, and I think.
and that's,
good.
see, I think that's good. I think
it's
that's
fair.
good because at least as a board member, we may have our sensibilities that may agree or disagree with that person. We may have our political stripes that may agree or disagree with that person. We may have religious beliefs or anything else that may agree or disagree with that person. But when we get around the board table, we're one vote in 9 and it's a vetted process as to whether we move forward on a vote to question that book or not. So there is also some vetting of the concern that's raised, because I will tell you what, the reason the state changed this law is in direct response to a spate of arguably bad faith objections to books that you know, by most sensibilities are acceptable at those age ranges and grade levels. But that people who didn't even bother to read the book were objecting to on a, you know, some political or philosophical basis. And you know, I think we have a duty to protect our students and to protect our curriculum, to vet out any of that sort of stuff. And if we get 5 votes on the Board of Ed to go forward with, let's question this book, then we go forward with it. And that can come from a member of the community.
But would it?
Why wouldn't it?
Right now, our Board of Ed, right, is. You're always gonna have a majority of one party. And I feel like our board currently, we work well together. Not every board works well together. And there's no way for us to know who's gonna be sitting on this board 10 years from now. Not that this won't be reviewed before 10 years, but I'm just saying, it's every 5 years. But I think that by eliminating the way for the public, the voting members of Madison, to have a say in this, it's gonna be subject to those, if we allow the board members to even say anything about a book, it's gonna be subjected to the opinions of those 9 individuals, and, you know, half of which at least will not be probably ideologically the same as that person, because you're gonna sit on opposite sides of the fence. There's only 2 sides.
Yeah, but as board members, we are trained and we keep getting additional training and reminders that we, you know, we're the conscience of the community, but we are servants of the state and we have a duty to the students and first and foremost. And, you know, apart from a dysfunctional board, you would expect that board members would come together and in good faith say, this objection doesn't seem to be based on a, you know, a rational basis that overcomes the curated the basis for curating it into the collection, right? And we think that our students should continue to have access to that book versus, you know, oh, here's an objection that seems kind of fair, let's raise it and
So,
then go through that process and have the library media specialist report back.
it seems to me there are several aspects, right? I mean, there's acquisition, standards for acquisition. There's age appropriateness and pedagogical value. There's transparent procedures that you want to be inclusive, and then there's the removal of an item. To me, the removal is probably the least salient, right? It doesn't happen often. It's more important that we choose good material and we have known standards. If it comes down to that's the consensus of the administration, I guess maybe that's it. I would be happy with that. You know, it could take, but I just think, like what would be the grounds to remove a book?
I mean, according to this, let's say, you know, someone who does not like gender ideology could not come in. It would have to be a parent, or a student or a faculty member.
Who's directly impacted by the collection.
I
Well,
mean,
So there is a rational basis for limiting it to members of
that
the
could
school
not even be
community.
brought, right? That because that would be part of the non-discriminatory, that would not even be allowed to be reviewed.
Although, look, we all know how it works. You know, if somebody has a problem with a book, they'll find a parent in the community
But
to
you-
raise it, and then they have their
but you could also,
representative.
Seth, you could also turn that around and say, look, we all know how this works. National Association of Librarians is left wing. And of course, the books that they select are going to be skewed one way. Right?
You could say that, but from what I understand,
So,
they're non-ideological.
well,
And they're education focused.
but I would be much happier if we had somewhere we had written or web link to, these are the standards, or these are the links, or these are the list of books upon which we could draw, something a little more
We
transparent.
do. Don't
I have
we
a
make
question.
over?
I think we do on the website.
Website.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Seen it.
yeah.
Quick question, our current librarians, right, we have. I forgot how many I have, 4.
Yeah.
So, are they all, librarian media specialists, or were they former teachers that became librarians?
So there's two paths they could go. You can go right to school to be a library media specialist, or you can be a teacher and take 30 credits in library media and then both take a test. So
So they're all,
I think it's a
Accredited or
combination. of-
whatever.
Yeah.
I also just to clarify, I mean, it should be hard to remove a book, I don't want, it would just be a fair process is all.
I think to answer one question, I think you've asked a couple times that hasn't been answered. I could see a review where we go through the process with the people listed. And there's consensus that this shouldn't be in the K-5 library, that this should be moved up to the middle school. Or
Right,
something
I mean-
like that, absolutely, or middle school to high school, like I could see that
I
being
mean,
the result, despite the recommendation, or we just don't feel that students are ready for it, like that's like an example I could see.
okay,
so currently, like, is there some sort of meeting of the librarians where they, hey, like.
It's very quiet, but yes, they secret.
They only pass notes.
Yes,
There is
they,
a tremendous amount of expertise at
Yeah.
that level, as you know.
yeah, we are fortunate, we have a coordinator for the program that works very closely. Coordinated the move, like does lots of work, it runs, and reports to Gail as well as the principal. But yes, they get professional development ongoing, they do a lot, and I want to point out, the way I read this policy is, it would go through the review, and then the person can appeal to the board, but the board decides whether the process was followed, not whether the book
Right,
in the new policy. Like you would say, okay, you followed the policy appropriately, the book stays in the
that's right,
library.
that's right,
Okay.
that's all we're doing.
But I can see some scenarios where you'd rather that be the, decision of somebody else rather than the board of ed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, be careful what you ask for.
it
It's
still
part of the
sits
problem.
uncomfortably with me, the way that it's written. Is there some sort of like timeline on this for adoption?
So if we had a challenge, I think we would have to straddle the current law, which is this, and our policy. So that's the struggle, because we're a little bit behind on it.
It does need to be done this school year.
Yeah.
Do you like to make any comments, Wolf?
I'm comfortable with the way it is right now. I think a compromise would be what Seth had suggested, where we would allow a Board of Ed member to be a part of the process, but I don't even think that that's necessary. But I do think that that would be a good compromise and would bring in the community, especially because, we are elected officials, so that's how the community has spoken.
I would just need to check, because it's defined by law, is that permissible,
Well, in the challenge library, it says, page, I don't know if it says line 148, number 4. For each challenged library and other educational material, the superintendent or designee shall appoint a review committee consisting of, and there is a representative
Yes, you
from the
get to,
board there,
yes, yep.
just to.
So, yeah, so I'm most comfortable with it the way it is right now.
But a board member cannot bring an issue with the way that it's written now. If, you know, we were having our meeting in the Polson Library and you pulled a book out and you're like, oh my God, what is this doing in this library? You couldn't bring it forward to say this doesn't belong here.
Well, we certainly would send an email to Dr. Cook. And I would
Yeah, I think that
expect that would matter to him.
probably part of the review is that, you have another access point. And I'm assuming you know a parent or two in town as well, that if you want, if you
I
whisper
feel
to
like
her.
you shouldn't have to do it that way.
You should need a stalking horse, but
Yeah,
I mean, you certainly could send an email to Gail, to Craig, I mean, it matters, that's,
I
our
don't like
voices
it.
matter.
I don't like this.
I mean, the one thing that I can see is
So I like it.
every once in a
Hard
while,
to please you, Diane.
I know.
every once in a while, you get that board member, right? And it could be, it's always Galen. Like you could see if we got, we tend to be a pretty collegial board and we tend to see things within a range. Every once in a while, a board member could fall into a seat by appointment or an election. That could have some more extreme views on either side. And, this is the kind of statutory language and the kind of policy language that would prevent us from facing a challenge to 7 books at every meeting.
But it hasn't happened yet.
But you're the one who just argued on the other side of that
I know, isn't
this
it
board
annoying?
gets along great, but who knows what'll happen in 10 years.
I'll argue both sides.
Yeah,
to be
I think
honest.
exactly.
I just think the best way to forestall controversy would be to pay more attention to the acquisition side. And I do think that, I mean, the important things are controversial and provocative, there are hot button issues in it, but that's where the age appropriate part comes in. Right, it's okay for a high schooler to read Oedipus Rex. Obviously, right? But.
I mean, I would also
But it's a
hope,
murky-
right, that the
murky area,
parents are
not one.
involved.
I feel very confident our library specialists, our library media specialists do pay a great deal of attention to the acquisition.
That's personnel is policy, we're policy, not personnel.
I think wrapping up another issue, as Maureen said before. If you don't like something right now, you don't go through it, you wouldn't go through like a formalized process, let's say you didn't like the athletic logo. You would bring it up at a meeting or email the superintendent, and then we would go through a process to make you relatively happy.
Maybe you can form a committee based on that or
Yes.
change the policy based on that.
I will say
That's true.
there's also like a technical loophole, I think a mile wide, I mean. It says library and other educational material means any material belonging to, on loan to, or otherwise in the custody of a district school library. So effectively, we have a library potentially of any district in the state. We could have an interlibrary loan,
Mhm.
bring it in and then. Conduct it.
Yeah, at the high school level, they can get books from outside, if a student requests.
And I'm not saying we should.
Right,
Right.
yeah. No, but to your point too, even if you were
Mhm.
monitoring the purchases, doesn't mean that, somebody could donate a book or something
Sure.
like that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Alright, so where are we landing on this?
I have Seth reread the whole thing.
Oh, that'll be easy, because I'll keep it right the way it is.
I do think though, from this ctlibrarians.org, right, that they actually said though. The process must be locally governed, open to residents, parents, students, and school staff. Like they said it right there, so I don't think. The CT librarians, whatever they're called, sorry, the Connecticut Association of School Librarians and Consortium or whatever. Like,
But I think they have their own vetting process probably where they develop the curated list for each grade or, school level or something, and they probably include Connecticut residents on that panel. Maybe that's what they mean. I don't know, I'm conjecturing here, but.
I mean, there are things I like about this, where it's a.
Yeah, but we're
fresh
focusing
and
on the
access
things that we
ideas.
don't like.
Yeah.
Cause that's how we're gonna get this through the committee. So, alright, 6:47, we still have time. I do think that it should include board members at the very least. I still think it should include the public, the voting members of Madison. That's my final say.
So if we were to, you know, count up who's helped vote, if we were to include board members, I would strongly suggest that rather than saying for purposes of this policy, individual vested interest means blah, 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 add Board of Ed members, I think we should add another bullet that says
It wouldn't have to go under definitions. It would just have to be
Yeah.
in the statement of,
exactly.
right.
Because calling a board member an individual with a vested interest is just not really, we have an interest in supporting education.
Well, I wouldn't wanna change that because that's
Yeah.
directly from,
From the statute also, that's another.
Right.
reason.
so like that, I mean, it's like verbatim.
Yeah.
So you don't really mess with that. But you would have to put it in, say,
Somewhere
under
in the process.
like line 92. Where it says 91, the purpose of this policy section regarding library material review and reconsideration is to establish a process for individuals with a vested interest. That's where you would add.
And the
Board of
Ed,
Education
yeah.
members. To challenge any district library and other educational material display or student program, as well as a process for the district to respond to any such challenges and related parameters.
And
So is that a change that?
Well, here's what I would want to say.
Not my best night for wordsmithing.
For individuals with a vested interest and Board of Ed members upon majority vote of the board to challenge any district library and other educational material.
No, I don't like that.
Well, but the reason I add that is because I specifically want it to be vetted by the whole board. Because look, think of it this way, that makes a single board member superior to the committee of the whole.
No,
Where
but
each one
if
of
you-
us only derives authority as one of 9 votes.
Yes, but. If you have a vote of 5-4, you still have almost half the board that doesn't like it, and then they can't still bring it, one of them?
No, because they're 1 vote in 9 and it's the same, they're subject to the political process. And I know, you know, when you're in the majority, that sounds wonderful, but you know, I served on this board in the minority for most of my tenure. And it's a long tenure. So, you know, things change and you do have the political process to try and change that. And if the Board of Ed keeps voting to keep these books that are like teaching kids how to do awful things, you know, then yeah,
We're not gonna get elected.
then yeah.
You weigh in on this, what's your view of that?
Of which, I mean, I think my vote was to keep it the way it is.
Okay,
I
but
don't
if
think
we were gonna add Board of Ed, and you were agreeing to that. that's
Oh,
what you
I
want.
think it should be by a
By a vote.
majority vote.
And Galen, what do you think?
Gotta think about it. I overloaded my brain, I made that point.
Because that would be the only occasion where we did that we gave so much power and authority to one board member. We don't do that anywhere else.
I guess I would have a question to Craig and the administration is, are you okay with the policy as stated here? And what, if any changes what impact would any changes have from an operational standpoint or a liability standpoint?
I think. You know, it wasn't a proposal that we sought at the legislature, you know, like it was not an issue for us here, but I think we were comfortable having reviewed it with Gail and in this committee before and looked at it with the policy as written, because I think it removes the potential to, you know, grind the district to a halt, dealing with lots of concerns with library materials from people that don't have a student in the district, which we've seen, you know, very close by happen.
How about having the board members say so?
I don't know where else we allow a single board member. You know, we do in conversation and then like, I think we come to consensus and certainly trigger some work of the district and things like that, but there's nowhere else where. You know, a board member can't say, I don't like the fourth grade curriculum and trigger, you know, all this action to happen. So I don't, I think, you know, my first recommendation is keep the policy as is. I would have to check. I would want to check with Shipman to see if it is legal to include a majority vote, but that would be something that I think we would do. I just don't know. If the board wants to take that on too, because I think you'd also have to put in there after reading the book. You know, so how does the board vote on
And I don't know how
all
to
9 board members? I was thinking of you. But no, like how all 9 board members would have to read the book, like somebody can't, we did have a concern once, and Mary Ann read the book, and she's like, that was a great
I
book.
like either of
Yeah,
those.
right, you
Yeah.
spoke about reading
I read
books.
I read like at
Jackie
least
had a
5 of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
And the problem is never with a reasonable parent because, or a reasonable community member, because like yourself, you might raise a concern and say, you know what, though? It says explicitly online what this book is about. The parent, as long as you have that information, the parent can look it up and discuss with their child. I don't want you to read this book until you get to 8th grade. Or, you know, I don't think this one's right for you, you know, and that's the way it should be. I mean, that's.
I agree with you, that's the way it should be, but I do understand. That there are many parents who don't have. An excessive amount of time to do that, and so they are relying. On the district, on the board, to make sure that what their child has access to is appropriate and safe.
But what you need to balance that against and the underpinning of this whole discussion is that what some of the objections might be are objections to things that have already been calculated to protect the rights of certain individuals
But
and
those you
not
can't
make
even
them
bring,
feel.
according to this, if it's something discriminatory,
Exactly.
you
can't
can't
take
even
it out.
bring it. So I think that is already an armor for the policy, so that some, you know, as my daughter would say, rando. Who just has like a bone to pick, can pick some book that they just have an ideological opposition to. If it falls amongst the discrimination, which. You know, based on race, color, sex, gender, identity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or disability. Cannot even be brought. So that already is a defense. And then to Galen's point, then why, how, what would you say is a reason to remove a book? Like what?
Denying the moon landing maybe or something like that, right?
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like there's not a lot of reasons that someone could bring a challenge. I don't see, again, I don't see why. I feel like the more you allow people to have a way so that you can show them that you did the process, they're wrong, and it stays, that's better to me.
But some of the people who are gonna bring. We know from the experience of other towns nearby. That sometimes, yes, it's not outside the realm of possibility that some folks will come forward with, you know, somewhat legitimate and fair points that they want to raise. And for whatever reason, the committee will either accept or reject that reasoning. But we know from real life experience that once this starts in a town, it becomes an issue and it doesn't stop and it, you know, it's motivated by ideology sometimes and extremism, and it just becomes like, you know, like those people that do constant FOIA, it's like terrorism by FOIA, you know, it'll become terrorism by book challenge, you know, so I see your point. But I think the statute gives us as a board the ability to avoid getting caught in a crossfire like
Okay, I
that.
got one more idea.
Yes.
What if there is a process that a person who is not considered an individual with a vested interest could bring a concern to the district, to whomever, and then have a way to have that be brought by a person with vested interest. And it's very vague. But,
Like you have a,
John Q. taxpayer doesn't like something, so he or she finds.
what's that?
So you're saying John Q. Public taxpayer,
Right.
Madison, objects to something, then has to seek out a person who has a child,
Or a
a
teacher,
teacher.
or whoever's a person of vested interest, a teacher, a student, a parent or guardian.
I guess not.
That's called Facebook.
Yeah. no, yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we will hear from those people, those emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, we,
Fred, they'll email the whole board, we'll hear from them.
All right.
Listen.
All right,
So we need to take, move on this.
We got 2 minutes.
we have 2 minutes, just so you know this for planning purposes, since we do have to do this year.
Yes.
Next policy committee meeting is in April. We have a long break between now and the next board meeting. It's not till March 10th. We only meet once in February. If you wanted, you could start.
you bring it to the board.
Bring it
yeah.
to the board for a first read all the way on March 10th. That gives us plenty of time to go to Shipman and say, is this even
Mhm.
legal to add this language in? Because if it's not, unfortunately, it kind of
Sure.
ends your debate
Yeah.
where it stands.
Yeah.
And that gives us plenty of time to stop and pull it back and not put it on for a first read. But you could at least initiate that.
Or it's on for the first reading, we talk about adding, we've done that before,
Yeah.
where a policy isn't fully.
Yeah, the board has the right to discuss it.
especially on ones that are statutorily required.
Correct.
Right, and I think we'll have, yeah, regardless, we'll have other board
My
members weigh in
point
on
being,
this.
we can
too.
always stop the ball, but might as
Yeah.
well get it rolling and keep the conversation going
Yeah,
as
so-
we gather more
That's a good
info.
point.
We can put this forward
Or next to the agenda.
With, yeah,
First reading,
On
for
March 10th.
first read at the next,
board meeting.
but as is.
As is.
with.
And then with a discussion that we have
And in the
something out.
meantime, though, we'll check on the legality of any proposed changes that we.
And the changes that we are thinking of would be seeing if a vote from the board
Correct.
could bring forward.
We will certainly ask Shipman that. So.
All right, are we in agreement on that?
Sounds good.
All right, let's, is there any public comment?
Well, you do have to vote to move it forward. to
Oh. We just did.
All
was
in
three.
favor?
All
the-
right, so, public comment, no? And so we are adjourned then at 7 o'clock.
All right.